Guys, want to know how you measure up as a man? I've got a great resource for you. It's called How Manly Are You? And it's a free quiz that you can take to figure out how you stack up against what it means to be a man. And when you take the quiz, you'll also get some free resources to help you figure out how you can get better as a man in the areas where you would like to grow. So go to manhoodtribes.com/manly to download your free How Manly Are You quiz today. That's manhoodtribes.com/manly. All right, guys, welcome to the Manhood Tribes show. I'm your host, Don Ross, and today I've got a really special treat for you. Today's show is going to be an interview with my friend, Ben Derrick. Ben and I are longtime friends. He is now a counselor and a coach who works with men, and in particular, men from a military background. So he's really got his finger on the pulse of what is going on in the lives and the world of men today. And our interview ranges over a whole bunch of topics, and so we're actually going to split it up into a few parts so that it's easier to digest. So today's episode is going to really just be about the state of manhood and what men are dealing with and what it is that we can do about it in this really difficult situation that we find ourselves in as men today. So let's jump into part one of my interview with Ben Derrick. All right, Ben, man, it is good to see you again, buddy. It's good to be doing this together with you.
Here we go.
Here we go. Hey, I want to just go ahead and jump in, and I want to ask you, as a mental health professional and as a former pastor, just a guy who has worked with a lot of men, I kind of just want to ask your perspective on, is it really as bad as it seems? Like, what is going on out there in the world of men right now? Like, give me your finger on the pulse, of kind of what you're seeing.
Yeah, it is a cluster. I mean, what do you put it in percentages, right? Is it 80% as bad as they say, 100%, 150%? I don't know the actual answer to that question, but I can tell you I believe that masculinity, manhood is in crisis. And I use that word very specifically because behind closed doors and even publicly, masculinity, the wheels are coming off the bus. And the things that are being provided to us as solutions are actually indicative of the original problem. So I would say a resounding yes, we are in trouble. Although I do appreciate there's a movement like what you're providing and multiplied across the country and even across the world of men who are beginning to wake up, to stand up, to take their feet, to figure out, hey, we've got to try something different here because this just isn't working. But yeah. I think if I run across a man who says, well, things aren't that bad, things are good, my story's good, I'm not buying it.
Yeah.
Nobody's in that place right now.
He's either lying or clueless, right? Just something's
right.
Not right there.
Probably
yeah.
both.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Aren't we all? So, okay. So what kind of has been like bugging me as I've thought about this problem lately is trying to just ask the question, like, are we men today, are we really facing like more difficult circumstances than men in previous generations, or are we just weaker men? Like, what's the deal? Why are we having such a hard time with life as it is at the moment? Or, maybe it's some combination of the two, but what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, wow, that's a loaded question. I'll tell you how I normally answer that. It takes me just a moment to work through it, but it starts with this premise that I believe that as men today, we are trapped in the smaller story. By that, I mean there's something epic, grand, big, challenging, gritty that we're created to accomplish from birth. I believe we're given that job by our Creator. I believe very heavily in the Bible and the story that it rolls out, that we're all given a purpose, and that purpose is to serve the meta-narrative, to move the ball down the field through the pages of history. And what's happened to us is we've been sold a very small story that kind of sounds like watch this, buy this, take this.
Yeah.
That is the adventure, and many of us have fallen for it. Now, here's where I ignite my compassion. I think we've fallen for it because we haven't had very good guides, because our guides didn't have very good guides, which is very interesting. If you get back to my grandparents' generation in particular, I mean, these people, by the time they were 18 years old, were storming the beaches of Normandy. They come back and provide a very soft life of peace peace, one that was purchased with a lot of turmoil and trauma, and they became the greatest generation and the most quiet generation at the same time.
Yeah.
So as a result, a lot of our fathers were not initiated. They didn't have a very vocal guide. So many men today, like in our mid-40s, we are actually accepting the narrative of the culture is that this is what it's about. We're living a Pinterest domesticated life.
Yeah.
So the question is, are we weaker? I would say yes, but I don't say that with a judgmental tone. It's because we haven't been presented with the type of challenges that are very cut and dry. Good versus evil. We've lost our belief in the institution because the institution has failed us. So many of us are outside of a local faith community. I mean, it's a combination of a lot of factors, but I would say, yes, if a man knows more about how he likes to have his coffee brewed or what thing he's about to buy on Amazon than he does about the overall purpose of his life and what his heart is built to do and conquer, then yes, you are a weaker man. You have settled for what I term the smaller story.
No, yeah, I agree, and I hear that, and I think that's something that I have kind of been wrestling with, exploring a little bit on my own. Is just kind of one of the things I talk a lot about here on Manhood Tribes is the just necessity of adventure in a man's life. That men are built for adventure, and that in our world today, it seems like we have really lost touch with that idea, that like you're saying, like our adventures are, how we craft the perfect cup of coffee and, like, can we line up our binge watching so that we can get everything in on the weekend, and it's just like, it becomes kind of like pathetic, what we call adventure these days. But it's largely because the world has been shaped for us and has shaped us, I think, in a way that it doesn't feel like there's a big adventure out there anymore. I thought it was kind of funny, just a few years back when the United States kind of created for the first time the Space Force, like the newest branch of our military. And it was like, as soon as it was a thing, it was like every guy I knew was like, I want to be in Space Force, I mean, of course we do. And it does kind of feel like, oh, there is actually something out there that is yet to be conquered. And you can just kind of feel like this internal sense as a man of like something rises up and says, I want to do that. I want to be part of that. Because it can feel like so much of our world now is domesticated. It's ordered and kind of doesn't need us in any sort of sense to be adventurous. And I think that's to our detriment. We probably are weaker, but it's not necessarily for lack of trying. It's maybe for lack of testing, I guess, if that's maybe a better way of saying it. Does that make sense? Does that kind of resonate with what you're saying?
You said it perfectly. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, here's another way to think about it, because adventure is kind of a bastardized word these days as well, which is exactly what I think the culture does to great words, just adopts them, bastardizes them, changes them so they don't mean what they originally did. But we spend our lives, especially as modern American men, I can't speak for men across the world, but as modern American men, we spend our lives mitigating risk. Like, I just don't want to take risk. I don't want to initiate sex with my wife. I don't want to have that difficult conversation with my boss. I don't know how to throw pitch and catch with my kids, so I'm not going to get out there and do that. We try to mitigate risk so that we're not embarrassed and so that we're safe. I mean, we value safety way too much in our culture today, which is a result, I think, of a lot of things that went on in the early 80s. But because we're mitigating risk, and what we do with that, our heart just misplaces risk. So we find ourselves living these very safe lives and consuming copious amounts of porn in the evening when our family's in bed, which is an extremely risky behavior, especially today. I mean, the number of men that I sit and talk with that have been extorted either through text message or online because they're just tripping into this risky behavior.
Yeah.
I try to teach men that it isn't that you're just a terrible person or that you're a sexual addict. Your life is craving adventure and risk, and you are not providing it in the right way. So you're going and providing it in the wrong way, the way that we were most likely taught as adolescents, linking it to risky sexual behavior. So, when you talk about things this way, there's actually a valid explanation for a lot of the crazy things we're doing as men today. And the valid explanation is not that we're horrible people. It's that things have happened to us to condition us to live the way that we're living today.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. So, okay, well, in light of that then, like what would you say that we as men need in order to be more effective at confronting our kind of modern challenges as men, to grow into our world effectively as men and to confront that? Like, if adventure is a part of that, like, what else, would you say guys need to be cultivating these things or possessing these things to really make their life work well?
Yeah, I love this question, and I can't wait to answer it because I know that it aligns with what you're pushing out there into the world today. But I think step one is connection. And you would think that's the easiest step. Like, oh, well, let me just introduce myself to someone. But
right.
You want to talk about frightening risk for a man, because part of what we've been taught today is that needs to, at some point, that needs to stop, right? You don't want to ask two questions as a grown adult male. Can you help me, and will you come out and play? You don't want to ask those two questions because they're very juvenile and childish, as our culture has sold them to us, that we should mature out of those things. Yeah. And I say BS to that. I mean, you should be asking those two questions for the rest of your life. Will you help me, and will you come out and play? Those questions imply that there is a connection point, man to man, that we should be doing things together, which is, to us seems very dangerous because, again, it forces us to release control, right?
Yeah.
Because that man might not like the things that I like, and God forbid he may ask me to do things that are outside of my comfort zone that are going to embarrass me. But look, the largest accelerator to growth in my life as an adult male has not been a sermon. It has not been a book. It has not been sitting around and soaking up information. It's been sitting with others and soaking up experience, and that experience calling me outside of myself. So I always say that step one is to find a group of guys that are doing dude things, right? And that doesn't mean you're like jumping off a bridge with a rope tied to your ankles. It may mean just having an IPA at the local bar, or it may be frisbee golf, or there are any number of things that go on when guys get together. The one that I see predominantly happening in my area is having a solo stove in a backyard and sitting around it and talking about life. I mean, It doesn't get any more simple than that.
Right. Yeah. Although jumping off a bridge with a rope tied to your ankle sounds pretty good to me. I'm down, whatever you are.
I mentioned that because it's one of the things I would definitely avoid. I believe in gravity.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'm for it. No, man, I think you're right. Connection and community, which, obviously that's all of what I'm about here, trying to talk through those things here at Manhood Tribes, and even just create environments for men to be able to do that, because I do think it is it's not just a lost art. It is, it's actually kind of like an avoided art at this point in our culture. I saw this really funny, it was very on the nose for the moment, little short on the internet the other day that was, it was making fun of this guy. He was praying. He was down on his knees, like on his bed or something, and he was like, okay, Lord, I am ready to meet the love of my life. And this like voice, comes in that's supposed to be the voice of God, and God says, well, I think you might need to leave your house. And the guy just gives up praying. And it's like, hey, yep, look, that's exactly right. That is just the world that we live in right now. And, that's true in dating relationships, but it's true for guy friendships as well. It takes more effort than most of us are willing to put into it. And I think for a lot of us, it's because we got lulled into a sense in high school and college that friendships were easy to make. And then we got into adulthood and they no longer were. And so we just didn't keep trying, like we didn't put any effort into making those friendships, and they just faded away, and we kind of treated them like we didn't need them anymore. I think that's really unfortunate. I think it sets us up for failure in 1,000 different ways that we don't have those kinds of friendships anymore. So I agree. Like I think that kind of connection and community, building a tribe around you it's a necessity. It is men aren't going to be equipped to be able to handle the world in front of them without that kind of connection around them. So we're on the same page there. So that's good.
No doubt.
So. All right, we're going to leave it there for today, and next time we will pick up with part 2 of what I know you're loving is an interview with Ben Derrick. In the meantime, if you would like to connect with Ben and find out more about how you can work with him as a counselor or as a coach, you can reach out to him at benderrick.com. That's Ben Derrick, DERRICK.com. We'll look forward to seeing you next time.